LiberalViewer present.
So last week, when a George W. Bush-appointed panel's recommendation of less frequent mammograms to screen for breast cancer was followed by the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists' recommendation of less frequent pap smears to screen for cervical cancer, the Fox News story I saw on this issue did a reasonable job of explaining the new guidelines, but when it came to covering the way some Republicans tried to politicize this news in the ongoing healthcare reform debate, Fox News did a poor job, falling into the trap of covering the controversy rather than informing viewers of the truth, as you can see beginning in the two clips I've spliced together here.
These new guidelines, though, James, they're raising some guidelines among a lot of people, and in some cases among some Republicans. Why are they particularly concerned about it?
Well, Republicans have seized on the issuance of these two different sets of guidelines for mammographies and pap tests from two different groups. Republicans are suggesting that these new sets of guidelines that we're seeing could augur the changes that we might see under the Democratic health care reform proposals that are soon to become law in one form or another, it would appear.
Now, reporting on the Republicans' politicization of these new guidelines is news, but the Fox News report only specifically quoted the Republican side with a fairly weak explanation for this one-sidedness, as I'll explain after you watch the clip, including a quote from a Republican who's apparently female, as you can see here.
One of the Republican senators speaking out about this was a female, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska.
I think that's what we're so concerned about here, is this might be that first step towards that rationing of care. It's kind of a peek under the curtain, if you will, about what government-run health care may mean.
Fox News requested an interview today with the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Kathleen Sebelius. She declined.
Now, I'm not sure why Secretary Sebelius declined that interview with Fox News, though it may have something to do with the way her appointment by President Obama was analyzed by Fox News' top-rated commentator Bill O'Reilly in his so-called no-spin zone that you can see here.
The guy puts Sebelius in as a health, and you can't get a more fanatically, and that woman is pro-abortion. She wants the babies done for. She supported Tiller, the baby killer out there. So enough with her.
So I'm not sure why Secretary Sebelius wouldn't feel welcome on Fox, but it wasn't even the lack of a response from the Obama administration that made this story so biased, and the story did try to at least give lip service to presenting the Democratic position, as you can see in this concluding note from that report.
Democrats and members of the Obama cabinet will tell you that the various packages of health care reform that have advanced through the Democratic-controlled committees of Congress to the House floor and soon to the Senate floor do not ration care.
But even though Fox News told you the truth from the Democrats that their legislation does not ration care, the real bias in this story was the way Fox News allowed Republicans to politicize pap smears, acting as if a political response from the Democrats is the other side, when, in this case, the antidote to Republican spin would not be Democratic spin, but instead factual information based on reason and logic that Fox News could have gotten from any of the over 50,000 American OBGYNs who belong to the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, one of whom you can see, for example, in the much more balanced news story from the much better PBS program The NewsHour with Jim Lehrer, which provided viewers with the facts from several doctors, starting with the facts from OBGYN Deborah Smith that you can see here.
Over the past 10 to 15 years, there's been more aggressive treatment of precancerous lesions, or lesions that actually would not develop into cancer, lesions that are changes in the pap smear but don't actually progress to developing cervical cancer. And what was found out is that when young women were subjected to some of the treatments, it actually damaged the cervix.
So PBS let its viewers know that there are actually dangers from getting too many pap smears, making this decision a medical one having nothing to do with rationing, a fact also supported by the additional facts PBS provided from another OBGYN, Dr. Nancy Gaba, that you can see here.
Cervical cancer and its precursors are actually a very slowly progressive disease. So by spreading out the interval between screening, you're not really compromising the patient's care, because it's very unlikely that there would be anything significantly different from 1 year to the next, or even 2 years.
So less frequent screenings aren't that big a risk, again making this decision a medical one having nothing to do with rationing, and it's not like it would have been so hard for Fox News to find an OBGYN willing to debunk the Republican spin, because not only was PBS able to find multiple doctors, but I was even able to find one in my own house. My wife, who, like over 90% of the practicing OBGYNs in the U.S., is affiliated with the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and she told me,
increasingly over the past several years, studies have supported less aggressive treatment of cervical precancers in women under 30. More often in younger women, these precancers will go away on their own if given time. In addition to the discomforts involved, the treatments have real potential risks, particularly with regard to preterm labor with future pregnancies. So there isn't much point in checking these tests as often in women under 30 if they won't require further treatment. And for women over 30, these guidelines aren't much different from current recommendations, particularly with the use of HPV co-testing with the PAPs. These recommendations do not apply to women with abnormal PAPs who continue to need closer follow-up. More is not necessarily better, and this is a more reasoned, smarter approach that is taking into account the newer scientific developments and knowledge about cervical cancer.
wow, that excellent analysis debunks the Republican spin and really begs the question as to why Fox News, the top cable news station, could not get multiple doctors to debunk the spin like PBS did, or at least get one doctor, as I was able to do without even leaving the house. But the worst part of this debate, by scare tactics, is that it obscures the real purpose of healthcare reform, which is not about rationing, but is about making healthcare rational. As described by a third doctor that appeared on PBS's NewsHour on Friday, former Assistant Surgeon General Douglas Camero, who pointed out,
it's going to be an interesting challenge as we try to rationalize our health system, which right now is a crazy quilt system where people get what they get, and we've got no budgets, and you just get what you get. And what's going to happen when we try to make it a little clearer what makes sense and what doesn't make sense?
And trying to make sense out of our healthcare system is not just about cutting costs, though a more rational, universal system will cost less, but it's also about making better decisions based on facts, as Dr. Camero points out in his conclusion here.
We're used to in this country of getting everything we can afford. And sometime that's probably going to have to stop. These may not be the perfect examples of that, but they do make people think about what's worth it, what's not worth it, what makes a difference, not just in terms of money, but in terms of health and outcomes and in inconvenience and side effects.
And that's right, because a real cost-benefit analysis takes into account all these factors, not just monetary costs, and I think it's a shame that process has to be politicized by Republicans, as facilitated by the Fox News story covering a controversy that really doesn't exist in reality if you just check out the facts. But I want to know what you think. Do you think Fox News owes its viewers real journalistic fact-checking of Republican or Democratic spin, more like the PBS story, rather than reporting on a controversy that doesn't exist in reality if you just check out the facts? And for my female viewers, do you think any women will actually let Fox News and Republican spin talk them into getting extra pap smears?
YouTube, you decide.